Hello, Shane here. I'll be sending through this PowerPoint presentation to you just to explain LTrace and the options we're going to have just in regards to the pick list and the PCP. But I thought I'd just put together this quick video so that I can just talk you through the presentation, and then later on, if we've got any questions, you've got the slides and the numbers to refer back to. Before I get started, I just want to talk about what's currently in place at the hospital. So you've basically got two things, and pardon the numbering, I had them all in order and then I've changed my slides around. So basically at the moment you've got a pick list that you're using within the storeroom to gather both sterilised items plus a number of consumables or whatever else you've got stored in the storeroom. So you've got one list there, and then in theatre you've got your PCP, and that's basically your starting list of your standard items. You're using it to confirm quantity, you're adding additional items on in theatre. But you've currently just got the problems that you're trying to keep two lists up to date. You've got a weak correlation between the pick list and the PCP, so it's not like one's automatically a subset of the others. When it comes to billing, you've just got the fundamental problem of you're missing items, and so therefore you're missing out on revenue. And then one of the problems I see is that sterilised items aren't being invoiced accurately. You've got a vague estimate on how to do that. So that's currently what's happening. And just to highlight some of the issues involved, you basically end up with a drawing like this, where within theatre you need to be invoicing both items that have come through from the storeroom as well as consumable items that you've got stored within the theatre. At the same time, you've got items that are coming through and then also being returned. So you can't just automatically assume everything that's going onto the trolley is going to be invoiced because items are going back. What you're after is something where you can invoice both items from the storeroom and theatre easily. You need to have a good starting list, but you need to be able to add items easily, and then you need to be able to remove items easily. And on top of that, you want to keep both lists up to date. You've got a huge number of lists, and as I previously mentioned, sterilised items are basically going onto here but not making it through to the actual invoice. So this is currently what's happening on site. Now, one of the things I need to say up front is at the moment your pick list and your PCP are currently two independent entities for practical reasons, and so you need to know what those practical reasons are, and keep in mind as you migrate across to another system that those reasons still largely exist, and we need to work out how to overcome some of the problems. Now, when you go to track, it's going to allow you to specify the items with a quantity automatically added, but also provide zero quantity items so that staff can quickly update it post-op. And so you're going to be getting some new functionality, and you really need to be working out what it is now. What's the good side of it? What's the downside? At St George's, they've got all of this functionality basically split. So they're using track to monitor what's going on in theatre, and then LTrace to be scanning sterilised items in, but they've got a printed pick list similar to what you're doing now in the storeroom. So if I wanted to look at that using the diagrams you supplied, so at St George's at the moment, Track Care basically has their PCP billable items. The master is there, and so theatre staff will use that as their starting list, modify it all within track, and then that's automatically going through to the bill. But at the same time, what they're doing is using LTrace to scan sterilised items into theatre. At the end of the procedure, all of those items are automatically linked to the patient, and then that information is pushed through from LTrace to track and will appear on the invoice when the patient checks out. So there's no correlation at all, no linking between the two systems. It's just the fact that because they've got really good, accurate information here, that's being automatically pushed out onto the invoice here. So that's St George's, how LTrace is working. Now, what I want to do is just momentarily take another step back, just so that you fully understand how LTrace will work. So basically, within the storeroom, someone will walk in with a scanner and they'll scan items onto a trolley, and the location's automatically updated in LTrace. Now, the trolley then is physically moved to prep or to theatre. Once again, the location can be updated in LTrace if you want, but the point is that that's a physical movement of the trolley. Once it's in theatre, you've got a couple options as to what to do. The first option is that you scan items basically off the trolley and into theatre. Now, the benefit of that is that there could have been 24 hours between items being scanned onto the trolley and into theatre. And during that time, something may have happened where you're recalling those items. So it's that last minute alert to say whether or not something's wrong. Another option is to move all items automatically into theatre. Now, that's much faster than scanning one at a time. But then it has the disadvantage that it's automatically assuming everything's in theatre, and then before the end of the procedure, you're going to have to scan items out of theatre. Or the third option is where there's no scanner, or for whatever reasons, staff can manually move items from the trolley into theatre, and that's typically not done. But the point is that by the end of stage 3, within theatre, you've got a list of all the items that have been used on the patient as far as LTrace is concerned, and last minute, that gets associated with the patient. So this is the current functionality within LTrace. Just keep in mind, as the procedure's happening, staff may need to go back to the storeroom, grab some more sterilised items and bring them in. And in this case, all they've done is scan straight in, added to the theatre list. Now, this can be done during the procedure, in which case you will get notification if there's anything wrong with those items, or it can be done post-op, but you do lose the immediate notification if there had been something wrong, such as the item not being sterilised or being recalled. So, once again, this is current functionality in LTrace. At the end of the procedure, unused sterilised items can be scanned back into the storeroom, either from the trolley or from theatre. And if they're scanned back into the storeroom, they will not be assigned to the patient. Now, at the end of the day, all the costs of the sterilised items are passed into track. The benefit of doing this is that the true cost of sterilisation is actually being passed on to the patient and not an estimate. But the big advantage is there's no additional work by staff to pass this cost through. So you've got a reliable track of the sterilisation costs, and you've got a fully automated process that's pushing this information through to your billing system, and it's totally accurate. Now, what I want to do is say, well, that's what we're doing at the moment, but the next step along is to say, well, let's actually improve what's happening in the storeroom with the introduction of the pick list. So previously, what I said was items were scanned onto a trolley and the location updated in LTrace. What we want to do is have a pick list. And so now the staff are going to be using a pick list that's on a device, and the pick list will automatically be marked off when they scan it. So what you're going to have is a dynamic list on a PDA being updated as staff are scanning items onto the trolley. What I'm saying is the next step for us is just to add the concept of consumable items onto this pick list. So consumable items will be marked off on the pick list, and there's a couple of ways we can do this. So the first one is we could put a barcode on the shelf near the item, and so you scan that barcode and it'll automatically mark it off. The benefit of that is incredibly reliable. The downside is it just takes a little bit more time, and as you're moving items around, you have to update the location of the barcodes, a couple minor things like that. but it's totally reliable. The staff have to be at that location scanning the item. Another alternative is basically just to have a sheet of barcodes near the computer or in a central location, and they just scan off those barcodes off a sheet. And that's got pros and cons. The third option is to simply just have a swipe action on the PDA. So similar to using your mobile phone, where you're looking at more detail, less detail, swiping left, swiping right. It's that sort of concept. And so they can just simply say, yes, I've got these bandages, swipe, whatever the case may be. Now, the big benefit from your point of view is, yes, you've got one process in the storeroom. So you're going to collect all your sterilised items, all your consumables, just using the one device, the one process. And the other thing is the pick list is now centrally updated within LTrace, which means that you can do it from any location. You will have special permission to do so, so it's not the case that anyone can jump in and do it. But it's much, much easier to maintain because it's all centrally stored. So that's easy, and that's where we want to take LTrace. LTrace is a good solution for it because it's basically very quick, it's reliable, the functionality can be shared between people, and it's all centrally managed. So it makes a lot of sense to have the pick list being managed by LTrace. Now what I want to do is have a look at the PCP. And so now what we're doing is we're having a look at how to move the pick list items into the actual procedure. Can we do that? So basically we've got PCP. Can we automatically get all of these items being marked off on these items so that we've got more reliable invoicing automatically? If we can achieve that, you basically are saving yourself time. You've got a lot more accurate information, but there are some technical issues that we're going to have to overcome. The big one is Track needs to support the fast import of items so that they can appear on the screen as quickly as possible. There are some operational issues though at the same time. So you need to be making sure that items are scanned in, but more importantly being scanned out in time before they get linked through to the patient. And you need to make sure that you're effectively accounting for non-scanned items that are manually added or removed. And so you need to make sure that you're manually looking after items that are not scanned. So these are basically all your consumables, making sure that they're accurately added or removed with whatever solution we're going for. And the PCP ideally needs to be in one system and one system only from a management point of view. Now it can be duplicated in the second system, but you ideally want to be trying to maintain it in one system. So these are my goals. What I want to do is just go back to option 3 and just clarify some of the things. So this is with the document that you sent through to me. So you've got LTrace, which manages the PCP list and manages the pick list. So what I need to say is, if you're saying that LTrace holds the PCP, we're saying that it's only within LTrace. That's the master, and it's got both the PCP list and the pick list. So to work within LTrace, the staff will retrieve the pick list, which is stored in LTrace, use that to pick all the items, and then within theatre, they'll be scanning items into the theatre. The PCP list will be updated, and then LTrace will be pushing that information into Track Care, and that will be going straight basically into the invoice, and billings can make last minute adjustments. But basically my understanding is with option 3, everything's sitting within LTrace. Now there's a couple of advantages. LTrace can be customized to make it as quick and easy as possible, and basically what I'm thinking is you're basically going to be mimicking a point of sale type device. So it's actually worthwhile having a look at how shops are managing it, and we'll be putting that sort of functionality into LTrace. And it's a single system to maintain. The disadvantage, and I haven't updated this slide, my apology, is that LTrace is the tracking system, not the billing system. So what we've just done is moved all the billing functionality into LTrace and taken it totally out of Track. And I'm not sure what the consequences of that will be, and would need to talk to Track about that further. Now, with LTrace, I just want to talk about another suggestion, which is about how to automatically take the PCP as much as possible to create the pick list. So this is what I'm going to call option 4. And so what I'm saying is the PCP can be maintained in Track. We'll export it to LTrace, and then we'll automatically create a pick list based on the PCP. And every item in the PCP has a code, and what we're going to do is say for each code we're going to have a flag to say whether or not that code is going to automatically go into a pick list. And so this will, if we get it right, will enable all the items and codes that are kept in the storeroom that are on the PCP to automatically appear in the pick list. And what I just need to stress is this is done once, the interface for when you're configuring the changes. So it's not information that we're going to pull out every single day for every single procedure. We're going to basically set up the PCP, and that will automatically flow through to set up the pick list in LTrace. And each time you change the PCP in Track, that's when the changes happen. So here we go. So what we're saying is that the PCP master lives in Track, and LTrace will keep a copy of it. We're going to have a flag to say whether or not it's pickable, and we're going to derive the pick list based on the PCP, and then we're going to allow you to go in and manually make changes to the pick list. What's then going to happen is within LTrace, we're going to display the pick list, and in stores, they're going to scan items based on that pick list, and then in theatre, they're going to scan items to the patient. Meanwhile, in theatre, they're going to use the PCP to do updates for the billing. So the PCP is basically totally controlled within Track, but at the same time, LTrace is using the PCP to try and do as much as possible with the pick list. There's another option, which is then where we try to feed this information back into Track. So we're going to take as much of this as possible and use this to feed back to update the information there. Now, I do not know whether or not Track will support this, and so that's a question with them. And the other issue is that you're just going to have to make sure that as they're scanning or updating information here, the staff are doing a refresh in Track just to make sure that the two are in sync. So a couple technical issues, and we need to be talking to Track about it to find out if this is possible. Now, to basically show you how this sort of flows through, I went back to the Excel spreadsheet that you provided as a sample, and hopefully this will explain things. So up towards the top on the PCP, you've got a fee for use of power tools. Now, this is obviously a non-physical item, and so it's just a fee. So it's something that won't appear on the pick list. You've also got an item which is Steripor 0.9% sodium chloride, and it's not in the pick list as well. So I assume it's something that you've got stored in theatre, and so it's something that is not going to be added to the pick list. So these are, so you've now got two types of things, your service type items, and then these items that are in theatre only, not on the pick list. And so we'd have a flag in LTrace to say don't add these items onto a pick list wherever they appear in the PCP. But at the same time, you've then got Vicryl 1CTX undyed. It's got the code of J37IH, and it exists in both lists. So what we'd be doing there is as soon as we see that it's in the PCP, we'd automatically add it onto the pick list. Practically, this is how it works. You've got a list in Track. We'll import that into LTrace, and we'll create a new list in LTrace with all of the items potentially on it, but not shown to the user. What we then do is we say, well, here's a list of all the items that we don't know what to do with in and we'll show you that in LTrace. Then what happens is your staff will go through that list and they'll mark each item as being an item that's picked or not picked. And when they're indicating that an item's picked, we'll go back to this list and automatically make it so that it will appear in the pick list. So you basically do this a couple times, building up a list of all these items, and the staff will only have to do it once for each type of item. And then what happens is from that point on, next time you make a list in Track or you modify a list, gets imported into LTrace. LTrace may make a new list in if needed, but more importantly, all those items that have been marked over here as pickable will automatically be added to the pick list. So in theory, within a month, you've basically set up the entire system. Changes can be made in Track and automatically happen in LTrace, and you don't have to do this middle step anymore. That's the theory. So advantages: adding items in PCP will automatically flow straight into the pick list. And then when it comes to the setting up of this in the first place, if there are variations in the initial pick list that we've already got in LTrace, when you're setting up in Track, I can highlight that to you. Okay, a couple warnings. The first warning is the link is based on a code, and it's probably the supplier code. In the sample that you sent me, I can already see that that's not consistent. So, for example, you've got Plasma Light 1000 mil, and I think it's the same item, but in the pick list, it's got the code AHB2544, and in the PCP, RFD050. So as far as I would tell, automatically, they're two totally different items, but by the looks of it, I'd say they're not. And so you'd have to make sure that the code is consistent for both sides. And the second warning is that you've got many items that are in the pick list, but they're not in the PCP. So you'd need to be either doing one of two things. You'd be going into LTrace and adding them into LTrace, in which case you're maintaining two lists, and that was one of the things I was trying to avoid. Or you'd be needing to add these items into the PCP, but somehow indicating that they're meant to go through to LTrace, but not appearing in theatre for the PCP. So there's a technical question as to how to manage those items. So they're the two warnings. Okay, that's basically the end of my presentation. Really, I'm not trying to give you definitive answers. What I'm trying to do is make sure that my understanding of the problems is the same as your understanding of the problems. And now your understanding of how LTrace will work as far as the pick list should be the same as mine. So we should be on the same page there. And now we're just trying to work out what's the best way of doing the PCP. Is it in Track? Is it in LTrace? How are we going to be synchronizing? So I'm just now trying to move the conversation to operationally what do you want to see happen, and then we work out the best way of implementing it. So I'm trying to just shift the focus onto why you're trying to do things, how you want to see that playing out, and then looking at the specifics after that. So that's basically it. And so we'll talk again soon. Thanks. Bye.